All right, hi everybody. We are finishing up your 2-1 notes today. We're going to do example 2 to the end. We skipped our two try nows from yesterday, but we can go over those when I get back, or you can try them on your own and we'll check your answers. Hopefully you already copied down all of your theorems. Our examples are basically just going to use those today. Example 2 says, how can you express each of the numbered angles in terms of x? So what I'm going to start out by doing is figuring out which angles have to be congruent to x. So I know this one here is my x. I know angle 7 is also going to be x because it's a vertical angle with my angle. I also know that angle 1 has to be x because angle 1 and my x are corresponding angles. They're in the same spot. And then I know angle 1 and angle 3 are going to be congruent, but I also know angle 3 and angle x are both going to be x because I know that if I combine any of these with x, this one is your alternate interior angles. Now I know it's alternate interior because it's on the opposite sides of my transversal. And if I connect my two lines, it is inside of my box. So all of those angles are going to be x. Now if I know they're all x, that means that the rest of them are going to be 180 minus x. And I know this because my angles have to be supplementary. They have to form to 180, add up to 180. And if you want, you can go through and figure out that, like, oh, hey, x and 2, those are same side interior angles. So this would be s in angles. If I look at 4 and x, those ones actually don't have an angle pair, but it's vertical angles with angle 2. You could go on and figure out the angle relationships, but all of those will be 180 minus x. Now if we look at try now number 2, it says angle 4 equals 118. So I know this angle here is 118. We need to figure out what the measure of each of the rest of the angles are. Well, I know angle 4 and angle 2 are going to be congruent because they're both together, they're vertical angles. So this one's going to be 118. I know this because angle 2 is a vertical angle. And I know it's a vertical angle with angle 4. My next one, I know angle 4 and angle 8 are corresponding angles, so they're going to be congruent. So this one's 118 because I know it's a corresponding angle with angle 4. Corresponding ones I feel like are the most confusing, but remember what that means is if I look at my picture here, we have angle 4 right here. I'm going to outline it maybe in yellow. Angle 4. Now, I always think about what would happen if I took this entire picture and I moved it over here. Now, if I moved it over there, what angle would angle 4 be on top of? Well, it would be on top of 8, so that means those two have to be vertical angles, or excuse me, corresponding angles. They're in the same spot, so they're corresponding angles. I'm going to get rid of my yellow lines, maybe. There we go. And let's see, the last one I know has to be 118 is, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of my, here we go, is number 6. Now 6 and 4 are going to be alternate exterior angles. And I know they're alternate exterior because they're on opposite sides of my transversal and the outside of my parallel lines. Now the rest, as we learned yesterday, well, not yesterday, but on the slide before, are going to be 180 minus 118. And if I take 180 minus 18, I get 62. So that means each of these angles has to be 62. And those are all of our angles. All right, example 3 says state the relationship between the indicated angle pair and then find the value of x. So for this one, we're looking at this guy here, 18x, and 17x. I notice I have my transversal here, and I'm going to draw my inside. Remember, it's interior if it's inside of my rectangle I just made. So what I notice is that 18x and 17x plus 5 are not on the same side, so they're going to have to be alternate. And then they're on the inside of this big rectangle here, so they're alternate interior angles. And now if you look at your table of properties about alternate interior angles, I know that alternate interior angles are congruent, so they're the same size. So if I want to write an equation, I can say 18x equals 17x plus 5. And from there, we're just trying to solve for x. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 17 from both sides. When I do that, I'm left with x. My 17s cancel, and then we're left with 5. So my final answer would be x equals 5. Again, the big thing here is figure out what your angle relationship is, and then plug it into, or excuse me, not plug it into, but look at your table to figure out if those angles are congruent or if they're supplementary. Try now 3a says state the relationship between the indicated angle pair, then find the value of x. So we're looking at this angle here, and this guy here, 12x. I have my transversal, and then I'm going to form my little rectangle here. Now if I look at 12x and 23x, they're on the same side. So I'm going to do SS for same side. And then they're inside my box. So they're going to be same side interior angles. And if you look at your table, you'll see that those ones are complementary. I'm just going to write comp because I don't have a lot of space, which means they add to 180. So if I want to write an equation, I can do 12x plus 23x plus 5 equals 180. And from here, we need to solve for x. To do that, I notice I have 12x and 23x. That gives me 35x plus 5 equals 180. I'm just going to zoom a little bit. My next step is we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Minus 5, minus 5. We get 35x, our 5's cancel, equals 175. And then we have one final step. Our last step is to divide both sides by 35. Divide by 35. I'm going to put this in a calculator here because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But if I do 175 divided by 35, I get 5. So my final answer would be, let's use x equals 5. Now, if you want to check your work, it's actually pretty easy to do. What you're going to do is you're going to take this equation up here, and you're going to plug x back in. So I'm going to do 12 times 5 plus 23 times 5 plus 5, and it should equal 180. If it doesn't equal 180, I did something wrong. If it does, we're good to go. So if I do 12 times 5, I get 60. Plus 23 times 5, which is 115, and then plus 5, and hopefully that equals 180. And if I throw it in a calculator, we have 60 plus 115 plus 5, which equals 180. So we get 180 equals 180, which is great. I checked my work. I know that 5 has to be the right answer. This step you don't always have to do, but if you're like, hey, Miss Sylvester, like I just don't know if I did it right, I'm really unsure, you can go ahead and plug in your value and double check. Try now 3b says state the relationship between the indicated angle pair, then find the value of x, then find the value of each angle. So I have my transversal here. I'm going to form my little rectangle. Now I noticed that 21x plus 5 and 23x minus 5, they're on the same side of my transversal. They're both over here. But one is on the inside and one is on the outside. If I look at them, I have this guy here and this guy here. Now remember, if I can take the bottom one and move it up, and they'd be on top, or the top and move it down, then we have corresponding angles. I'm going to call them core angles. Remember, corresponding angles are angles that are in the same spot. Now, if you look back at your table you just filled out, you would see that corresponding angles are congruent. That means that they are going to be equal to each other. So my equation is going to be 23x minus 5 equals 21x plus 5. I'm going to zoom out quick, but we're going to solve for x here. In order to do that, we are going to go ahead and let's start by adding 5 to both sides. When I do that, I get 23x equals 21x plus 10. Then we'll subtract 21x from both sides. When we do that, we get 2x equals 10. We'll divide both sides by 2. And we get x equals 5 as our final answer. Now we need to find the measure of each angle, so we're going to plug in 5. So my first one was 23x minus 5. We're going to do 23 times 5 minus 5. If I do 23 times 5, I get 115, so we have 115 minus 5, which equals 110. That's my first angle measure. Now my second angle measure, this guy here, it should also be 110. If it's not, I did something wrong. If it is, we're good to go. So we have 21x plus 5. We're doing 21 times 5 plus 5. 21 times 5 gives me 105. And if I add 5 to that, I get 110 as my final answer, which is great because this guy and this guy, they match, and they should. If they didn't, we would have done it wrong. Those are your notes for today. Please make sure you have these examples done. Please make sure you have your table filled out, and you should work on your day 2 homework. You should now also be able to do the back side of your worksheet from yesterday. You should be able to tell me what the angle relationships are and how big each of the angles are. Thank you for watching.